Yep.
We can see?
Yep.
Okay, so I kind of left the presentation open-ended on purpose. I wasn't sure what the turnout was going to be like, so we can go really high level and just kind of brush over things, or we can get into the nitty-gritty, or I can just give you a brief run through and we can go from there. Kind of leave it up to you guys. Basically,
I like nitty gritty. I can't speak for everybody else though.
The grittier, the better.
Yeah, go for it. I'll make questions later.
Alrighty, so we published on Steam about a month or so ago. I guess I should close the stream here. And the process was kind of actually a pain in the butt. I actually, Stefano, you're gonna like this. I actually just made a Starlight Express game build just so I could show off what all it takes. So I did this the poor way. What you should do is you should have like your personal game account on Steam, then you should make like a new Steam account that like you publish under as like the publisher or whatever. But I was lazy and didn't. So basically, what you do is you pay Steam like $100 to get on Steam Direct because they canceled their Greenlight program, which used to be that like people would like vote on your game and it would get onto the store or whatever. Now you just pay the $100 and it gets put onto the store once you've met all their criteria. So all their criteria, they basically give you out these checklists over here on the right-hand side, and there is just a metric ton of stuff that you have to do. So I figured I'd give you guys a brief overview of what they force you to do, so that way you know, at least at a surface level, what's required to publish a game to Steam. So we'll work through the checklist, and I'll just explain what they are. So the basic info and descriptions is just what you'd see on the face of the store page. The mature content settings, unless you are publishing in like Brazil or Germany or something like that, like you can just put it like no nudity unless you have nudity, I guess. My game wasn't an issue with that. I just put we don't have any mature content. And then the self-rating questionnaire was similar. It just didn't have any country-specific questions. Planned release date, you can put in whatever and you can edit it later. System requirements comes pre-filled, but you can choose like the operating system, the like minimum RAM, and so on. You can choose pricing. We went with just free, but they have all sorts of like pricing options with like DLC and how you can package things and whatnot. So the biggest pain in the butt for setting up a Steam page was all of the art that was required. So you needed 5 or more screenshots, you needed a trailer, you needed different sizes images, because when you go to the Steam store, you see you have like this big header image here, and then when you go to the actual page itself, the image here is different, as well as the previews that you use for announcements, and the ones on the workshop as well are separate. And they all have like, they give you like a Photoshop template, and you basically have to make your template fit it, right? So thankfully, I got lucky that I had a good team of UI designers that handled it for me. But it's still a decent turnaround time to get those done. And then one of the biggest things that you'll want to pay attention to is the tags that are applied to your game, because that's really how people are going to find it. And they implemented a new tagging system that I was actually just playing with. So when you go to your dashboard, you can see your different products. So you can see I literally just made this guy, and here's Jumping Jack's tool that we published. If you click on the top level guy of it, it'll take you to like the application admin page, and I believe it was under store page. So you can see it's really just like fill in the blank. They give you the field, and you have to fill out like the name of your company, your website URL, all that jazz. As far as the tags go, special settings. You can tell I haven't done this enough. Ha! They're there. This is okay. Workshop tags are different from like item tags. So like if you go to Steam or whatever, and you go to search in the store. Oh, actually, mine are right there. You can see like I have strategy, adventure, indie, casual, racing, and so on. So those are vast majority of the way people will find your game. So I take some time to fine tune them. Back to the checklist. And then if you want to have like a community page, which is like where people like put like discussion posts or ask questions in the forums or anything like that, or add reviews or whatnot, you'll need specific artwork for that. One of the things that you'll want to take note of is if you want to do something in the future but you don't have it implemented, if you check the box saying like it's a thing, they'll come back and be like, no, it has to be like done right now in order for you to say it. But once you publish your game, they don't care anymore, and you could just like rip it out of the game and they wouldn't even know. The problem with it is that if you do one of those things, you're going to be waiting 3 to 5 business days for them to get back to you on that. So if you have like a deadline that you're trying to hit, make sure you really pay attention to the things that you say you have in your game. The cloud saves and achievements they were extremely picky about, because I couldn't figure out where I checked the checkbox for Steam achievements, and every time I was like, yeah, you should go re-review my build again, they were like, no, you still have this problem. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is your store page, which is just all the store, all the community, any of the workshop stuff. And then it comes to configuring your actual game build. So when it comes to configuring your game build, you have 2 separate things that you have to work with. You have your builds and you have your depots. So builds, as you can see here, I have 2 separate branches. So I have the default branch that all of my normal users are on, and I have the beta branch which you can opt into. So if you go to Steam, your library, and you right-click on the game and go to Properties, and then go to Betas, you can opt in to a different branch, and you can add a password to it, right? So like, if I only want my like QA team to be able to test it, I could put a password on it, and only they would be able to touch it. But our code is all open source, so I didn't see a reason to put a password on it or anything. So basically, we can run through an example of this later if you guys would like. But basically, like you upload a new build, you assign it to the branch that you want, and it's really that simple. And then you hit the publish button to actually publish those changes out to Steam, and they're effective within 10 minutes. The second thing that you'll have to concern yourself with is depots. The way my game is set up is super simple right now. I basically say I support Windows and I support 32 or 64-bit, and that's all I have to worry about. But in the future, we'll be looking at adding Mac and Linux support. So you have to create a separate depot, which is basically like all of your like if you're using Unity specifically, you'll have your executable, and then you'll have all your like extraneous game files like lighting and all that jazz in a folder. And you'll bundle all those up, and they may change depending on the operating system. So like lighting data, for example, would work across all of them. So you'd put that in a all OS's depot, and then you put the Windows specific stuff in its own depot. So that way you can kind of chunk them out, and you could put the files where they belong appropriately. And once you have the Steam pipe set up, basically the next step is to like actually go and publish your game, and that's where the Steamworks SDK comes in handy. So if you once you've made your like Steamworks partner account, if you go to documentation Steamworks SDK, it'll download the SDK, and it'll look like this. So inside of it, they have a bunch of different tools that you can use. So they have the GL manager, which, if I remember correctly, allows you to like transform your like DirectX code into like OpenGL compatible shaders. They have this public folder, which actually holds like the API itself. It's literally like C function headers, so that way you could like know the API routes to call. So like if I wanted to like add a leaderboard entry, I'd use their API for it. They have the redistributable bin, which is basically all their DLLs, so you can pull in their functions and actually use them. So these are kind of what links to the header files. I'm awful at C, so don't ask me for advice on that. The Steamworks example folder is literally like an entirely built game. It's called like Space Wars or something like that. They basically built an entire game that's compatible with Steamworks. They don't do everything inside of that game, and it's all in C++, so if you're a Unity dev, it might not be as useful. And the folder that you're going to be living in is the tools folder. And in here they have a bunch of other stuff. The only thing you'll ever need to use if you're just publishing a game and like putting stuff on the leaderboards or the workshop or whatever is the content builder. The content server, I think, is if you like want to like give your game content at runtime. Goldmaster is for DLC. Linux is for, I assume, Linux stuff. I have no idea what that's for. But anyway, so inside the content builder, you have a couple different builders that you can use. So inside the content folder itself, it comes with this text file that says your game content lives here, and you make your own folder. So inside of here, this is literally what Unity outputs. I literally just copied all the data that Unity output and dropped it in this folder. So then you go back up to the scripts folder, and they give you an app build and a depot build. And I'm gonna open these on my other monitor because one of them has a password in it. And I don't remember which one. Okay, not this guy. So the app build, this is for building the application, and then you have the depot build, which is for building like this bundle of code, right? So the app build has your app ID, which you can see if you have your game open, it's up in the title up here, and it's literally it's littered all over the Steamworks workshop or the Steamworks partner page because this is like your most important thing. If you type that in wrong, you're gonna be like using someone else's app ID. So then when you publish, you give it like a description. You choose the output folder for all the logging. I never touch this. The content route. So it's relative. So it goes up a folder and then it goes to content. So that's how we get to our Windows content folder. And then I never touched any other stuff. And then for depots, you just had to give it the correct ID. So in the depots guy, all of this stuff comes filled out. By the way, literally all you have to do is fill in the data in between the strings here. And so literally all I had to do to change this guy was to give it a local path to point to where my files are. And then the last thing you do is once you set up those files, hold on, let me take out my login information. So we'll put user and pass. So if we go back up one, it gives you a batch file, right? And the batch file is just this guy. It uses the Steam CMD executable, which is literally just like a command line program that runs. And you add in your username and your password here. It runs your app build and then sends the build over HTTP, and then you give it the app build file so they link together so they know where to point, right? So if I wanted to push my game up to Steam, I would literally just double-click the batch file, it would run, and then it would ask you for my two-factor authentication because I have it set up, and then it would literally just upload to Steam, and I would go to the builds thing, the builds page, and there would be a new build here, and I would just say, select an active branch, preview the change, and then hit OK to set it live. And then hit publish. And it's that simple, right? So you build in Unity, you copy your files in there, you run the batch file, you select your branch that you want it to go to, you hit preview, and done. So once you have that process down, it's relatively simple, but as soon as you want to do like more complex things with it, like working with different operating systems, it gets all sorts of messy. And I don't want to deal with that yet. I want to just have the game more fleshed out, so I haven't worried about it yet. As far as the downsides of working with Steam goes, their documentation leaves a lot to be desired. So if we go to their actual the Steamworks SDK documentation, I have it opened up. You can see they give you like a rundown of like what you need to do to set up your store page and whatnot. And yeah, I would recommend reading through it. It's a lot. It's a lot of information, but it's pretty useful and it'll make sure your builds don't get declined. It doesn't cost anything extra or whatever. It's just extra time for them to review it and come back. If you're doing the development side of things, the majority of the time you'll be spending is in the Steamworks API. And basically, they give you an interface, and so like let's say for example, we'll go to user stats, and then if you scroll back down, it'll break it down just like any other API documentation. So we could go look at getting an achievement. So the functions that they give you are in C++. However, I'm in Unity, I'm working in C#, so we need some sort of C# wrapper around the C functionality here. So the one that I chose for that is Facepunch Steamworks. And this is... I love this guy, he's so funny. This was made by Gary Newman, who made Rust and Gary's Mod. And he uses Unity for his game development, but the Steamworks API wrapper that's out there, the only other big one is Steamworks.net, and it is just an awful and ugly implementation. It is such a pain to work with. Whereas his, you can see it's super simple. Once you import it into Unity, when you start one day, yeah, there we go. You literally in your game manager or some singleton that you have, you'll just put system.client or steamclient.init, and you'll pass in your app ID. And if it couldn't init, you don't have Steam open or something. The cool part about this is once you have it, if you have Steam open and you open Unity and you hit play and this init function calls, it won't say play right here. It'll say stop because it thinks the game is running because Unity now has a connection to Steam. So now anything you do in Unity will pretend as though you're doing it on the game playing on Steam. So it basically replicates the entire process. And then the second spot you'll be spending some time in the documentation will be the instead of the regular API reference, they have a web API. So if you just want to make if you have some separate server that's going to be handling data, you can just make HTTP requests to change data. And it's not as robust of an API, but they still give you access to a decent amount of things. Like if you are a server, you may want to do lobby or matchmaking or check what players are in your lobby or whatnot. So that's a really high-level overview. I feel like I went fast. I'm sure you guys have tons of questions.
I think you mentioned before it costs $100 to submit your game to Steam. Is that per game or is it per? It's probably per game. Is it per game? I guess. Okay, yeah.
Yep. And you could, you technically could like have one. It's per item that you would have in your library, basically.
So if you were being sleazy.
Yes, you could be sleazy with it. I see what you're getting at.
Yeah. Okay.
But obviously, for marketing reasons, that wouldn't work.
Yes.
I feel like if I just ask, does anybody else have any other questions? This is really open-ended. So I could go show you some implementation level things that you would do in Unity that might make this more clear.
Oh, I had a follow-up question, sort of.
I'll open up Unity
So,
for doing this.
You're essentially, are you building twice then? Or is that the code that you were using before essentially just code to upload it to Steam servers?
Yeah, this batch file is literally just, it's looking at whatever folder you point it to, and it's literally just uploading it to Steam so that Steam has a copy of your game. So that way when people want to download it, they now have Steam now has a copy of your game to dole out to people, right?
All right.
So that's what one of the main features of the Steamworks Sdk is, the SDK is so that you can, it gives you access to all the APIs as well as it allows you to push your game up and have them hold on to it.
Oh, so that's two separate portions then?
So the Steamworks SDK is like it's a large toolkit that comes with all the things that we talked about earlier, the GL manager, all of the API code, all that jazz. Like if you go into the public folder and you look here, you can actually see they actually give you a JSON file that is the entire API. It gives you the callbacks, all the fields you have to pass in, and the stuff that's returned from it for each of the API calls.
Okay. Oh, I guess my confusion is, I know that DLLs exist, but I didn't see one specifically for making those API calls.
Yeah. I'll show you how they work. So in my imported assets folder, I have the FacePunch folder. So I have this redistributable bin, which holds, that came with the Steamworks SDK. It's right here. And inside of it, it holds the Steam library API for each of the different operating systems. And then I have separate DLLs for FacePunch, which wrap around those guys. But the C# DLLs that are wrappers rely upon the C-based ones, right? So I have to have both of them in my project because they're dependencies. So you can see if I just go to the inspector, if I click on the facepunch.steamworks.win64 DLL, you basically set the settings up so that you set it to 64-bit, you set it to Windows, and you set it to the Windows platform with x86 64. I don't know why these two are separate. It's kind of janky to me, but so yeah, now that these DLLs are imported, now you can access them in codes. So once you've imported them here and you've set the proper platforms that they're on, I can open up Visual Studio. And I can now use, this is probably really small for you guys, using Steamworks. So now that I have a DLL, I can import it into my actual code using the using function, right? Similar to Java's import. So in my game manager, I just have a singleton, right? So on awake, if I haven't made a version of this yet, I set it equal to me, and I tell it not to destroy in between scenes, right? Because in my game, I'm loading in between different levels. Otherwise, so the reason I had to do it this way is that you're going to start from the main menu, and then you're going to go to a level, right? So you don't want it to destroy itself because this guy needs to live across all of your levels. However, if I'm testing manually, if I want to just hit play on level 1 and I don't want to go through the main menu, I also need the game manager to exist on that guy, right? So I need to basically there's going to be a game manager that exists on the main menu, and there's going to be a game manager that exists on every level. So if it's a duplicate, I just tell it to throw it away here. I just tell it to destroy it if it already exists. And then everything after these lines of code will only run once, like in the entire lifetime of your application. So I have a Boolean variable that asks me whether or not I want to use Steam in this build. And if that's so, I go start Steam. So start Steam, you can ignore this. I basically say if the Steam client isn't valid, meaning if we aren't connected to the Steam network, we just initialize it. And then we catch an error if we want. And then when we on application quit, which is a built-in mono behavior function, you just tell the Steam client to shut down, otherwise it will leave that connection open. So that's like the very first thing you have to do. And then a lot of the calls that you'll be doing in Steam are asynchronous. So you can actually debug. Some asynchronous operations will fail silently, and you won't know why, and it won't give you any exception. So this delegate will actually allow you to hook into those and debug them. And I found that by Gary was kind enough to include a test repository, which is all his manual tests. That it's basically like a little CMD application in Unity that allows you to test each of the individual API frameworks or API modules inside of his framework. So if we were to go do something, we can look at a couple different things. We could look at the way we are saving leaderboard entries, or we could look at the way the workshop works. Which sounds the most interesting to you guys?
Honestly, I'm digging. I want to hear the leaderboard stuff.
Okay.
So workshop I've dealt with, but I like leaderboard.
So just to show you the way I worked with it, if you load up the main menu and you go to level select, if you click on a level, you'll see it populates here with everybody's leaderboards. The only thing really special about mine is if you hit this replay button next to somebody's name and you hit play, when you load into the game, I actually just finished this today. It'll be broken because I fucked it up. But if I go to a different level that I didn't just change and now that data is corrupted, you will see a little ghost guy. This guy right here. This is actually the replay of the guy that got 4th place on this level. So you can watch it, you can see how he beat the level, right? So the way that works is when you, I guess I'll go back to this guy to show you. When you click on the replay button, what happens is I grab the leaderboard entry. So I made some cool prefabs such that each of these. Nope. Okay, so I have it on confined screen, so my mouse literally can't leave my screen. So I have to Alt Tab to something that isn't on this monitor, so it'll unlock my mouse. There we go. And if I click back, it fucks it up. Okay, so if I go to scene and I go to 2D, and I click on one of these guys. Each of these individual line items they have their own custom script on it called Leaderboard Entry. So when I initialize these dynamically at runtime, I basically say, hey, Mr. Steam, will you give me the top 10 leaderboards? And when I get those back, I create these line items based off of it, and they store that actual leaderboard entry as data in their script. So that way when I hit replay, I can say, send that leaderboard entry to the UI. So that way when you hit play, we have a reference to it. So set replay is what happens when you click that button. I pass the entry that was stored there, and I say if the leaderboard entry has attached UGC, and UGC just stands for user-generated content. So if the leaderboard has a ghost run or a replay attached to it, and Steam does some dumb shit where they use unsigned longs for their values, and their invalid number is -1 or 0 or something like that. And when you convert it to an integer, it's this number right here. It's like the largest int that you can hold or something along those lines. I don't remember. But basically, if we get through here, we have a valid ghost play. So I set the file ID, which is a published file ID, which is like if you go to the workshop and you click on any of the items in the workshop, up in the URL up here, you can actually see the unique file ID for that item, right? So every item that's published to the workshop has a unique file ID. So in my game, I have a level editor, and we can talk about that later as well, that you can publish your own levels, you can subscribe to it, and anybody else can go play them. And then your replays are also stored as workshop items, but they're stored as hidden workshop items, right? I don't want other people to see the data that I'm storing for the workshop items. I don't want them to be able to manipulate it or update it, right? But it still needs a file ID so I can go update it, right? Like if they get a better time or whatever. So then when I hit play, now that I have like a reference to that ID, I basically I tell my game manager to load the new scene, and while that scene is loading, I asynchronously go out and I tell my workshop manager to download that ghost run. So the downloading of the ghost run, okay, this code's gonna get really messy and really scary because asynchronous is scary code. Basically, I query the file at that ID. If it doesn't have a value, we're gonna error out. We're gonna pull the value. It's an optional variable. For those of you that don't know what optionals are, it basically means like it either could or couldn't, or it doesn't have to have a value. It could have a value or it could just be null. So we have to check if it has a value inside of it, right? Because like I'm asking the server for something, it very well could just like error out and not give me anything back. So I have to see if there's a value inside of it. So if there is a value inside of it, I see if that item is installed. And the way items are installed from the workshop is wherever your Steam install is. So in my case, it'll be in Program Files Steam, Steam Apps, Workshop, and Content. And then you can see the number here is my app ID. Remember we set that up earlier. And then inside of it, these are the individual ghost run files. So if I double click on it, you can see it's a hop1.save file, right? So this is the save file for the first level, basically. So inside of here, it holds all the replay data, which is it's just JSON holding a long list of vector 3s, right? So like every 60th of a second, I store their position off. And when they complete the level, I save it off and upload it to Steam. And then when somebody pulls it down, they just, pull those vectors down and they make the ghost move every 60th of a second, right? So if the file is installed to that location, and if it doesn't need an update, meaning like they haven't gotten a better time, we get the file. I added this check-in because I was doing a bunch of testing and I was manually deleting these files to see if like users tampered with it, how it would work. So this was just an error checking for that. If it hasn't been installed and it doesn't need an update, then we start the download. If it needs an update, we do the update. If it's not installed, we install it, and then we return the full URL to that address, right? So it'd be like c:// blah 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 all the way to the file. So that way, when I load up the level, when I'm loading in my ghost runs, I can load them in locally, right? So if I never go hit play or replay on somebody's leaderboard, if I just go beat the level and I hit replay, my own ghost will go there. So I'm racing myself, right? So I can either load from a local file, which is just stored in your app data, like every other application uses, or if I click replay, it'll go load from the workshop data. Was that confusing or a good enough explanation?
Guess I understood it at a general level.
When it comes to the code, working with async is really shitty because you have to do error checking at so many different levels. Not to mention like understanding like the await syntax and whatnot, and how that like blocks your thread. Like the biggest problem with doing it this way is that since this function, do you understand how async works, Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Got it. So the problem with it in Unity is that if you use an async function, like if I go look at where this guy is called, I now have to make the person who calls it async too. It has to go all the way up the stack, so that way it can start on a new thread, which can go in some of my classes. I don't remember which one it was, but like even the start and update methods are asynchronous in order to handle that. Which means if I don't handle things correctly, I can get into a deadlock, which will literally just stop the UI, and I have to Alt F4 to quit the game if I didn't do it correctly.
I didn't know you could make start and like the other Unity methods asynchronous. I know you could do like I enumerators, but
Yeah.
Oh,
There,
okay.
I believe whenever you like override something's method signature, you can add IEnumerator or async, and there's a couple of other things you can do with it, but not useful in this context. Oh, as far as the actual leaderboards go, sorry, Charles, I got off topic. In the game manager, I say when they finish the level, if their time is less than their time on the last one, or if the time is 0, meaning I haven't completed it yet, set my completion time, save that file locally, so I have my own save, which all it really does is it gets the file path, uses the JSON utility to convert it to JSON, and then writes it to a file. Super simple. Same for the load, it just does the reverse, right? It reads it all from the file and converts it from JSON to my persistent data model. So yeah, so I save it locally, and then if I should be using Steam, then I'm gonna go save that level of completion, right? So like if I'm not connected to Steam, right, if I'm playing this game offline, I don't want to be trying to even go up to Steam, right? But if I do, then I check if our Steam client is valid. And so step 1 is finding the leaderboard itself, right? So there's going to be a leaderboard for each level. Inside the leaderboard, there's going to be a list of entries, right? So if our leaderboard has a value, we pull that value out. We convert the time string because all the leaderboard can store is a score, which is a float. Float, int, long. It's int. So I'm using the number of milliseconds that it took me to beat the level, and then I just convert that to an actual like timestamp when it comes back, right? So I convert how long it took me to complete my level to milliseconds, and then I submit that score asynchronously. And this is a function that's built into FacePunch. So I just say, hey, Mr. Leaderboard, now that I have access to you, will you update my score since I internally know about my like Steam client ID? You know who I am, so you can update my score for me. And after I've updated my score, then I'll attach some data to it, right? I'll attach my replay data to it. So I get the top 10 entries. So I did this because in my level select menu, you could see that I was only showing the top 10 entries. I don't care to show everybody else's because who wants to look at the 1,000th place person? So if there's never been any entries, we're going to create a ghost run. If there's less than 10 entries, then we're in the top 10, so place it. If our time is less than the 10th entry, we're in the top 10 now, so create a ghost run for me. The biggest problem that I ran into is I didn't know that when you submit a new score, for whatever reason, it clears your attached file. And there's no documentation for that. So every time I was updating my score, all of a sudden my replay was disappearing and I could not figure that out. And one of the best things you can do when you're working with Steam is there's the Steamworks development forum, like literally on Steam. I think I actually have some. Yeah. So if you go to their discussion board or whatever, they're pretty quick about answering questions and whatnot. And it turns out the solution was every time I complete the level, I have to upload a new workshop item. And I was like, I can't tell if that was sarcasm because that seems wildly inefficient. And the Valve guy said, well, that's our problem to handle if it's inefficient because we should be storing whatever data you want. So that's what I ended up with. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Dig it. Cool.
Yo, Sabian, I gotta wake up earlier tomorrow, so I'm gonna head off, yeah?
Yeah, you look tired of shit. Go to bed.
But yeah, see you around. Nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, thanks for showing stuff.
See ya.
Late.
Thanks for showing us this. This was really fascinating.
Yeah, and if you get more curious, all the code is open source if you want to go poke around with it or whatever.
So, I remember you were talking about making a, I guess, level editor, custom levels. I would assume those would have their leaderboards.
Yeah, that's where things get really weird.
Yeah, because my follow-up question was going to be like, how would you detect if a level has changed, and if so, like that all the old times or something either need to be.
I don't think I have accounted for that yet. So my level editor is painfully ugly and simple right now, but it works. It works just like Unity works. I copy pasted Unity. So yeah, when you save it, it just saves locally as like a JSON data, and then when you go back, okay, actually it actually should work just fine. When you go back to the level editor, you click on your level and you hit publish, and so that's super cool. I screwed something up. Anyways, I'll figure that out afterwards. I haven't used the level editor in a little bit. Basically what it'll do is on the workshop, it'll add an item. And if you hit the publish button again, it'll just overwrite that item, but it isn't like the leaderboard. It'll keep its same ID. So when I go to actually load up a workshop level, so if I go to level select, you can choose hop levels, portal levels, or workshop levels. So you can see here's like my test level. And you can see replays are loading, right? Because they're attached to a leaderboard, right? And the way I run my leaderboards is that if I use a function, here I'll actually go show you. That'll make it make way more sense. There's a function built into Steam called find or create leaderboard. So if I ask for a leaderboard and it doesn't exist, it'll create it for me and add my entry to it. So if somebody made a brand new level and I try and find the leaderboard for it, it'll create it and then add my entry to it. If they update the level, it still has the same ID, so it'll still find the correct leaderboard. The problem is that the leaderboards are named in strings. So if somebody makes the same level name as another player, they'll collide. And I haven't sorted that out yet. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take their level name and add their Steam ID, because that's a unique number, like to the end, and put like an underscore in the middle or something, so that if they name it the same, like they'll still be technically unique overall. But I don't have a big enough player base that that's a high priority problem yet.
Well, you never know. You could be like the next, I don't know, viral indie hit.
We've gotten some pretty good feedback. One of my favorite parts about the Steam tools is you can go look at your navigation traffic. They have like analytics built in, so like you can go look at like your lifetime and whatnot, and like we're doing all right. But like, you know, we're a free game, so like I'm hoping we get more than this.
Is there any hope of monetization of this one in the future in some way?
So I actually was talking to a good friend of mine, and he came up with a really good point. Have you guys ever heard of the game Asu? It's
No.
like it's a rhythm game, kind of like Guitar Hero or something like that, but it's on the computer. It has like 15 million monthly unique users, and it's a free game. And what little reading I did on them and what I learned from conversation with my friend is that they wouldn't have probably even a fraction of a percent of that audience if they had made it even a couple bucks, right? Because that even like $1 is still a large barrier to entry for some people. Some people are truly only free to play, and you know those people go tell their friends to play it with them and whatnot and so on. So I think that the reason that they chose that decision-making process was because their game type was so niche that if they put a price tag on it, people would be hesitant to do it. I think my bunny hopping mechanics are so niche that I don't think I could draw a large mainstream crowd. So my goal would be to use... I have two goals. One would be to use the game to generate enough marketing and hubbub about my company that at my future games I could sell for money. Or my game's about a cyborg corgi, so I have a feeling I could sell like t-shirts or plushies or something and probably get away with that.
Fuck yes, merch it out. I got the resin casting ready for you.
Hell yeah. I was thinking about doing 3D printing like a cyborg corgi would be cool as hell.
Got that ready. Just put in the order.
And then obviously I'll set up at some point I think I'm gonna probably set up like a Patreon or something. I thought about the idea of you know, obviously lower tiers would support us, but if you pay like $100 a month or something, we will 3D model your dog and put it into the game, and you can use it as a skin.
I've never been interested in Patreon before, but
now you are.
yeah, and at a fucking high tier too.
Exactly. I thought it would be a cool idea for people whose pets have died to like be able to use our game to like go play with their dog for like one more day. I thought that'd be
You're
like
not
really
supposed to
cool.
make people cry in
Yeah,
this meeting, Saban.
I know. But I still thought it would be a really cool idea to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like, pay us a couple $100, send us a couple pictures of your dog, and we'll put them in the game. And you can go hip hopping with them across the city. Actually, I think the last time I showed you guys the game, I didn't really have any cool levels to show you guys. I still don't have anything like terribly awesome, but I've been playing with lighting and the level layouts. I don't have any assets done yet, but I've been I really like the reflective lighting and whatnot. I've been trying to master the cyberpunk flow and like get like a feeling for like being in like a downtown high-rise area. So once the assets are done, I think the feel of this is going to be super awesome.
Yeah, and it's definitely coming along. It's looking more cyberpunk and less like internal Tron situation that it was earlier on.
Yeah, definitely. And we all these materials are just like stuff that we had lying around. They're nothing like special. So once our artists get to it, we'll be rocking. I finally got a character artist on the team, and the mock-up that we have, like he has like the body fully sculpted and rigged already. He's just doing like the clothing and skin tones and stuff right now, and it looks super amazing. I'm so pumped. Actually, we have I don't know if I showed you guys this last time. I have so much random shit for this project. I think it's this guy. I don't want to be in 2D. Oh god. We have like the first pass at the corgi. And if you put the material on him, he's looking kind of like a cyborg. He's getting there. I think he's gonna be super cute when he gets animated. And
That's tight.
And maybe once he has eyeballs would be cool. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We've been slow moving because like we're all just doing this in our free time, but for as big of a game as it is, I think it's coming along swimmingly. Any other questions I can answer?
Sweet.
It's an impressive undertaking.
I am like 2 years into this project, but I've only had a team for like 6 months, and the first year and a half were literally like the first 9 months were physics, 5 months after that were portals, and then it's just been everything else because I didn't want to use the rigid body or collision system that Unity had built in because I wanted like a fine grain of control. So I literally like hand coded all the physics and made my own like continuous collision detection system rather than using any of theirs.
Honestly, not a bad call. Given some of the hassle that we've had with just physics and 2D getting really weird
Yep.
with higher speed collision and fine-tuned controls, especially with input mechanics on there. Oh, yeah, with Unity, it's almost worth it to just fucking recode it yourself.
It just gets so complicated so fast when you're trying to do bunny hopping. I think I mentioned this last time, but the source engine is the movement code that I wanted to base it off of, like the bunny hopping from CS Counter-Strike. And their movement system code is 5,000 lines of C++, so I had to figure out how to move that to C# and work with Unity's physics system. It was a pain. Took forever.
Jesus.
I would have rather moved over 500 100-line scripts than one 5,000 line scripts, because the complexity of like how all the data intermingles and is passed around is just awful. Also, have you guys ever seen the YouTube videos of like Valve's comments in their code?
No.
You have to go look up like oh man. Yeah, this video. when I was poking through their code, it was just so funny. They're like, // this is a hack. Never do this. But Josh said it was okay. He's an adult. It's like stuff like that. It was so freaking funny. Or like, we don't know why this works, but there's a one frame glitch where if you're like trying to go underwater, you're like your friction won't work correctly, and this is a hack, and it only works on the netcode side, not on the single player side. Or things like that are just super funny to find and just scratch your head at.
Sounds amazing. I think I've been guilty of putting that in code. Admittedly, like, no idea what this does, but
You're only creating future value for somebody's YouTube channel or ZTube or whatever the fuck it turns out to be in 10, 15 years.
When I get to the point where, like, right now this is in alpha, but when it gets to the point of like a stable beta, I'd like to go back through all the workshop, Steam, and physics code and make like a really long tutorial series basically explaining how the whole thing was made, because so many of the pieces of this there was just nothing out there for. Steam didn't have a whole lot. Like they had the like how to build to the depot and whatnot, but they like Face Punch alone didn't have a whole lot for like teaching you how to work with like attaching replay data to leaderboards. There was literally nothing out there on it.
Bam.
So if I had to do this project all over again, I could probably do it in 3 months, but due to the lack of documentation, rip.
Buddy, nope.
Well, I feel like I've rambled on long enough that I've lost interest. I feel like it doesn't take very long about like talking about like async code or something for people to just be like glazed in the eyes.
No, you've got a new watcher. The cat has decided to come and listen. And he's not taking no for an answer. So
I closed
yeah,
the door on my cat because he was doing the same thing.
yeah. No, I think that's pretty damn solid. I'm really looking forward to seeing some more folks in OGDA really hop on and at least get to the point of publishing something. Because I think a lot of what has been produced out of the game jams, even from a small scale perspective of non-monetized games, putting something up is so important.
You're not going to get a job anywhere until you do.
Yeah. But that you're right that there's talking about barriers. Yes, there's purchase barriers, but that $100, I still say is less of a barrier than Greenlight ever was. And if it ever turns into a situation, maybe this is something that OGDA could become in the future. Are there folks like a mini Patreon situation of, look, we believe as a group that the game you've made at a game jam we've put together or that you showcased is worthy of being published on Steam.
Yeah, it'd be a cool grand prize for winning the game jam. Is that like you get the payment to publish it?
Yeah, we put together the money prize to publish it up, but under the terms that you actually use the money to fucking publish it up. I mean, it very clearly with you floating around and everybody else that's here, to be able to support folks to make that publishing effort, to make that final polish or make some other edits could happen. That sounds like a pretty slick idea.
Yeah, I agree.